Michelle, what your family did for me. Because, you guys, I have only been able to even talk about this in the last month. I mean, what was it, like 6 weeks ago? Heidi was there, and in my living room, and we're starting our little YGY Moms meeting, and I'm like, I've never talked about this in public, ever. I am a really good poser because I've had pain for a long time. And it's really hard when you've had pain for a long time, you compensate in lots of ways by being super awesome in other ways. But you live this fear that someone's going to find out that there's a lot more going on and they might have to pity you. My health problems are so far behind me that I had to create a note in Evernote to remember what all of them were. Yeah. I was just like Melissa Brewer, and she basically told that whole story. I just said I wasn't going to drink the Kool-Aid, and I was just going to see what happened here. But in April of last year, I had a strong feeling, my husband had a strong feeling that I needed to go to the convention. And at that convention, I was going to make the final decision as if I was staying or not. I was struggling with so many things that, my cheese moving, Heritage Makers, was kind of the last straw. But when I sat down to listen to Dr. Wallach, and he walked into the room, I felt something from the top of my head to the end of my toes, and a feeling that said, listen, this is why you're here. And I knew that I had to drink the Kool-Aid. I was like, okay, here we go. That's going to be the last thing I'll do. At the time, I was suffering from fibromyalgia, and if any of you know what that feels like, it's going to bed so exhausted. And it's kind of depressing to go to bed because you know that when you wake up in the morning, you're going to feel worse than when you lay down. You will not feel rested, and you will feel like someone's been kicking you in the ribs all night long. I had times where we had to call the massage therapist to just massage me to get out of bed. I had osteoarthritis, diagnosed at the age of 23. I had a scan in my thumb. I'm like, why is my thumb all inflamed? Well, it turned out my whole body was riddled with arthritis at the age of 23. Didn't know why. At the age of 40, I found out I had a lot in common with people who have ADHD. I was like, hey, brought in a couple kids to get diagnosed, and I recognized, I'm like, ooh, maybe that's why I didn't finish college. Maybe that's why I left the country whenever something exciting, I heard about some exciting job somewhere. Probably the biggest thing that I was suffering from was malabsorption because of a number of, I'd had lots of different joint surgeries, but also different abdominal surgeries that had left me unable to absorb anything. And I had tried some of the most natural, raw supplements. I tried the most expensive supplements. My husband worked for, I'll just say the name, Nature Sunshine. I took their supplements for years. And my malabsorption got worse and worse. And I was so sick that I finally went to the doctor. I was suffering from severe depression, and I thought, they've given me every antidepressant on the market, and it doesn't budge it, like one tick. And I thought, no, you get an antidepressant, you start to feel better. I can't feel like this. I would rather do anything than feel this, because it feels like no hope. I finally told my doctor, I said, I'm so tired, I am drowsy. I've been sleeping for 3 days, and I'm so tired, I'm drowsy. And when he heard that, he said, let's check one more test. Let's do one more test on you. He goes, let's check your ferritin level. Because my hematocrit wasn't quite in the toilet yet, But when they checked my ferritin level, the results they said would be back in 2 days. They called me right back and they said, you have to go to the hospital right now. You're practically dead. You have no iron reserves. And I went to the hospital and I got a 3-hour infusion of iron into my veins. And by the evening, I could smile a little bit. My husband said, I think you just smiled. And I said, no, I didn't. I didn't smile. I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm going back to bed. But by the next morning, after that infusion of iron into my veins, my head popped off the pillow and I was Debbie again. I was like, oh, I've got a lot of people to call, I got a lot of stuff to do. I didn't know that a deficiency in one mineral could do that to you. My doctor certainly didn't know that a deficiency in one mineral could cause severe depression that no antidepressant could touch. I became dependent on iron infusions once a week for 6 weeks, my portion of the infusion, and I'm with all the cancer patients doing this in the infusion center. Once a week for 6 weeks, then all that iron would run through my system. Hematologist said, don't even bother taking iron. You've taken every supplement, you do not absorb it. And I would start that cycle again in 3 to 6 months. When my tank was low, I would know that I was severely depressed, my tank was low again. You can imagine the cost of this, $250 once a week for 6 weeks, and repeat that every 3 to 6 months. With all the other things I have going on, and I always leave like 5 things off because I can't get to everything that I was suffering from. I finally, after hearing Dr. Wallach, I was like, let's try this. 2 weeks into it, bone-on-bone arthritis, we didn't talk about that. I need knee replacement surgeries in both knees. 2 weeks later, 2 weeks, I'm like, I'll do this for 90 days. 2 weeks later, I felt pretty amazing. About almost 2 months later, it was my time to go into the hematologist and get my tank filled up again if it needed it, but I was feeling pretty good, and they always do blood tests before that. It was a PA that I don't usually see, and she goes, well, your hematocrit's good, your calcium's up, your D's good, everything looks good, and I'm like, you've got the wrong person. Because I'm deficient in everything, I don't absorb anything, I'm only getting iron, I haven't had it for a while, and they're like, no, your hematocrit's 47. And I'm like, no, we've never been in the 40s, ever. And she goes, well, what iron supplement are you taking? I'm like, I'm not taking an iron supplement. And I remember I ran home and I looked at the tangerine, and there's 1 milligram of iron in there. 1% of the daily recommendation. But for some reason, like a camel in the desert, my body absorbed it all. Malabsorption absorbed every single bit of that iron, and it started to fill my tank. Dr. Wallach absolutely changed my life. And as much as I don't want to be that lady that goes up to you when you're not feeling good and says, well, I've got some Kool-Aid for you, I got some. As much as I don't want to be that lady, at this point, I have a moral obligation to share. I cannot shut up, and I won't shut up. And looking at that little video, I'm going back to Thailand. I'm going back to Japan. I speak Chinese, Japanese. We're going everywhere. And Russian's next.
All right.
Learn Russian. And I just want to say really quickly to both Adam and Wendy, in a time when leadership was needed, to pull this thing out, try stuff, reevaluate, see what works again, and make it happen for everybody. You guys knocked it out of the park with your leadership, and I am forever grateful for that. Saving my health and saving my business. I am forever grateful.